Hey everyone, Chris Kim here, and in this section of the course, we are going to initialize an Algokit Python smart contract template using the Algokit CLI. And we're going to explore what the project looks like, how you can use this template to write, test, and deploy Python Algorand smart contracts. Now, at the time of recording this video, the latest Algokit CLI version is 2.7. So the structure of the template may change in future Algokit CLI versions if you're watching this video at a later time. Okay, so if you've been following along the Algokit workshop series, you should have Algokit CLI and Docker Desktop installed on your computer. If not, check out the description below in this video to find the installation links to these two softwares. So make sure you have those two things pre-installed. All right, let's just dive straight into the code demo. You should follow along as you watch this video. And if you run into any issues, just come to our Discord channel and ask the question there, and we will be of service and try to help you out. All right, so the first thing you want to do is open up any terminal that you have on your computer and go to a directory where you want to initialize your first Algorand project. Now, make sure you have Algokit installed. You can check that by doing algokit -- version, and you should see something like this where it shows the current version. Now, once you have confirmed that you have Algokit installed, you want to run the command algokit init. Now, this is a command that is going to start an interactive session with you, and it's going to ask you a series of questions to learn more about the type of project that you are trying to build. And after the initialization, it's going to create a new Algokit project that is bootstrapped for you. So we have a series of templates that you can choose from. So the first question it's asking you about the project that you're trying to build. And we currently offer 3 templates: a smart contract template, a front-end template, or a full stack template. Now, the smart contract template is mostly for building your smart contract. So it doesn't have a front-end component to it. It's just related to your smart contract. The front end, on the other hand, it's a React project that is integrated with Algorand Wallet using the use wallet library. Now, this template doesn't have the smart contract component built into it. So if you're trying to just build like a front-end component that interacts with the blockchain, or if you already have an existing Algorand smart contract project and you just want to plug this into that existing project, this is the project that you want to use. But if you just want like the full shabam, you want both the front-end template and also the smart contract template, you go with the full stack one. But for this course, we are going to choose the smart contract template. Now, I'm going to select that by hitting enter. Then it's going to ask me, what language do I want to use for the smart contract? Now, on Algorand, we offer 2 programming languages to write smart contracts: Python and TypeScript. And you heard that right. We actually offer you native Python and TypeScript support for smart contracts. So no need to learn a new language. You just write your code in either Python and TypeScript. And for this course, we are going to choose the Python template. Then it's going to ask you to name the project. Let's name it Python Smart Contract. But you can name it however you want. Cool. So that's going to start rendering that template. And then it's going to ask you the name of the smart contract that you're trying to build. Now, for this demo, we're just going to keep it as hello world, but you can change this however you want. Then it's going to ask you what preset you want to use. So we offer 3 options. A starter template is like a simpler template that has less boilerplate. So it's great for prototyping or testing out your ideas. Production is it has more features in it. It has test folders built into that and some CI/CD pipelines. So this is great if you want to just get straight to building and trying building something production ready. Or you can just choose custom and actually customize your template. So you can just go through the questions and choose what type of boilerplate you want in your template. Now, for this course, I'm just going to choose the production template. Then it's going to ask you what programming language you want to use for your contract deployment. And it also offers Python or TypeScript. Now, this is basically asking, hey, when you are going to be deploying your contract and interacting with your contract, what language do you want to do that in? So we have these 2 libraries, Algokit utils Python and Algokit utils TypeScript, which are like the SDKs for interacting with a chain or interacting with your smart contract. But since we're doing a Python course here, let's choose Python. Then it's going to ask me to run this command, Algokit project bootstrap. Now I'm going to hit yes because it takes some time, but what that command does, it basically installs all of the dependencies that is required to build that project. So instead of doing something like pip install or npm install, it's just doing that for you. Great, so now our template is ready. Then it's going to ask you, do you want this to be a Git repository? Obviously, yes to that. So let's just hit Y and say yes. Now, if you have VS Code set up as your default editor, Algokit will actually automatically open up your VS Code and open that initialize project for you. And it's going to open it up in workspace mode. Let me make that a bit bigger for you guys. Now, a lot of people get confused by this whole concept around workspace. So let me just quickly explain to you what workspace mode means. I'll leave a link in the description below that takes you to the documentation explaining what workspace mode is, but it's basically a VS Code feature that lets you work with multiple projects with different environments and dependencies in a single IDE. So instead of having multiple VS Code windows open to work with multiple projects, like for example, your front end and your smart contract template, you can just do that all in one single IDE, and VS Code will handle those projects in an isolated manner. So you'll get dedicated terminals for each of the project, and it's just like a really nice way to work inside of a mono repo. Now, the reason for using workspace mode is because when you create a project with using Algokit, all Algokit projects is a mono repo, meaning it creates a workspace that can contain multiple projects inside of it. So let's actually go back to our terminal. And if I do an ls, you can see that we have this Python smart contract project that we have just created, right? So let's cd into that, right? Now, if I just open this up in VS Code, so this is a new one, you can see that it is not in workspace mode, and it just opens that project up. And you can see that this has a different, structure than what we just saw over here, right? Okay, this is a bit confusing, but bear with me. Now, the reason for this is because, let me go back to the non-workspace mode one, is because if you look over here, we have this folder called projects. And if you look in there, we see that Python smart contract template that we initialize using Algokit. So this is actually the project that we're going to be working on in this course. But it's inside of this huge Algokit workspace. So under this projects folder, if I were to open up a new terminal and run Algokit init once again, and maybe create like a front-end template, that template will actually go under this projects folder. And it will all be contained inside of this one Algokit workspace, a mono repo. Now, if you have opened your project manually like this, and it's not in workspace mode, or if you're using a different IDE, you can just work without using the workspace mode. So what you would do is you would go to your terminal, cd into the projects folder, and then find the project that you're going to work in and open it up here, right? And then you don't have to worry about workspace mode. But it's just nice to use workspace mode. And if you do have multiple projects, it's just nice to be able to work on it in a single IDE, right? So you can go inside of workspace mode by going to this python-smartcontract.code-workspace. Right? There's a file that ends with workspace. And there's a button here that says open workspace. And if you click on this button here, it will open your project in workspace mode like this. Now, if you get confused about this concept, we have a page on our developer portal explaining how Algokit workspace works and how it's structured. So I'll leave a link in the description that takes you to that developer portal page. All right, now let's go through this initialize Python smart contract template and see what kind of files are in here and how you can use this to actually build your project. So we have a README file that tells you about how you can set it up. If you were to clone this repository, so if it's an existing repository, how you would initialize and install all the dependencies using Algokit. And it also tells you just like some workflows that you would be going through when you're working in this template. So definitely take some time to give this README a read, but let's just go inside of this folder here and see what we have. Okay, now if you could focus here, it has a bunch of files in there, right? And it looks very daunting, but really the folder that you care about here is really the smart contracts folder and the test folder. All the rest of the files are configuration files that you don't really have to know about. If you become advanced and if you want to customize your project, then it becomes relevant. But as someone starting off, don't really worry about it. You just need to worry about these two folders over here. Okay, so let's actually go inside the smart contracts folder and take a look at what Algokit has created for us. So inside the smart contracts folder, we have this folder called Hello World. And this contains two files, contract.py and deploy_config.py. Now, if you go inside of the contract.py file, it gives you a default Hello World Algorand smart contract written in Python. So this is a fully functional Algorand smart contract. You can build this, deploy it, and it will work. Right, so it's like the simplest example of an Algorand Python smart contract. So let's take a look at this code here and see what's happening. So we're importing in from this algopy module, that's the Algorand Python module, and we're importing a bunch of classes and methods here that we're using. You can see that we have one Python class called Hello World and is inheriting from the arc4 contract. So what this means is, in Algorand Python, a Python class represents an Algorand smart contract. So to define a smart contract, you just create a class. The name of the contract is Hello World. And when you're inheriting from the arc4 contract class, that's saying that this Hello World smart contract follows the arc4 standard, making the contract composable, and it will fit into the rest of the Algokit tools. And when you build this contract, it will generate ABI spec of your contract, and it will create the application client. So it's just really nice. It gives you a really nice developer experience to use the arc4 contract standard. So I definitely recommend you guys inherit from the arc4 contract class and build arc4 contracts for your smart contracts. Okay, so let's take a look at what this Hello World contract do. It has one method called hello. It takes in one argument called name, which is a string type, and it returns a string. And it basically returns a concatenation of string hello with the name argument. Very simple. But let's take a look at this decorator here, an ABI method decorator. What is that doing, right? So when you have a method that has the ABI method decorator, that's saying this hello method is an external method, meaning when this smart contract is deployed on the Algorand blockchain, anyone can call this method. It's exposed to the public, right? So you can think of this as like a public API that people can call from their front end or their back end or from anywhere else. If you don't decorate it with the ABI method, the Puyo compiler won't know that this is an external method. So if you want to make it external, you have to decorate it with the ABI method decorator. And that's basically it. It's a very simple contract. So you would be modifying this contract.py file when you're building your contract, or you can create a new file and you can work on your contract. Okay, now let's try compiling this contract, because the Algorand virtual machine, which is the VM that executes your code, it doesn't understand Python, unfortunately. The Algorand virtual machine only understands this code, programming language called Teal, which is a very low-level assembly language, is super efficient, but not really convenient for us as humans to understand and write those code. So we gotta compile this high-level language written in Python into Teal so that we can deploy it on the Algorand blockchain. So how do we do this? You open up your terminal, Now, it's going to give you multiple terminals when you're in workspace mode. So make sure you choose the Python smart contract template, the terminal, sorry. And what you do is you run Algokit project run build. Algokit project run build. If you run this command, that's going to take this contract.py file and compile it and generate a bunch of artifacts. So you can see it has successfully ran. And if you go to the Explorer here, you can see that under the smart contracts folder, now we have this folder called artifacts. It was automatically generated by Algokit. So what is that file containing? It has created a folder called Hello World. And inside the Hello World folder, we have these 6 artifacts automatically generated by Algokit when you built or compiled your contract. So let's kind of take a look at what's here. The first 2 files that I want you to look at is these 2 teal files, approval.teal and clear.teal. Now, Algorand smart contracts are consisted of 2 teal programs, approval program and clear program. An approval program is where all the main logic is at, and clear program is a very special type of program that handles logic when a user sends a clear state transaction, which is a forceful way of opting out of contract, but that's out of scope for this course. So really, all the logic that you write will be inside of the approval program. So this approval.teal program here, you can see it's in assembly code called teal. Very hard to understand for us humans, but the AVM loves this language and it makes it super fast and efficient. So that's the code that's actually going to be compiled into bytecode and be deployed into the Algorand Algorand blockchain. So let's also take a look at this arc56.json file. Now this is the ABI app spec. So this is like an instruction for that Hello World smart contract, basically giving you all of the information about the contract, like what type of methods it has, the name of the method, the argument that it takes in, what type it returns, the bytecode of the approval and clear program, right? Everything is inside of this arc56.json file. Now, what Algokit now does is it takes this arc56.json file and automatically generate this Hello World application client. Now, this is a typed application client that you can later on initialize to create like this gateway into deploying and interacting with your smart contract. It makes your code super elegant and it's just a nice way to interact with your contract. Later in this video, I'll show you how we will be using this typed application client to deploy and interact with our contract. So these are the artifacts that are generated when you run Algokit build. Okay, now that we have compiled our contract, let's try deploying it. So now we're going to take a look at this deploy config.py file. All right, let's take a look at what's in here. Cool. So inside of the deploy config.py file, it has a deployment script that runs when you try to deploy your contract. The first thing it's doing is importing in the Hello World client, the typed application client that we just saw, and is specifically importing in the Hello Arcs class and also the Hello World factory class. The first thing it does is it basically instantiates this thing called an Algorand client. And it's doing that by doing Algorand client.from environment. So this is going to create an instance of the Algorand client, which is also like a gateway into interacting with the Algorand blockchain. So think of it like this. The Algorand client is the client you use to send transactions and query the blockchain, basically interacting with the chain. The typed application client that was generated by Algokit is your gateway into doing everything regarding smart contracts. So 2 clients with different purposes, but those are the 2 clients that you would mainly use when you're doing stuff on Algorand. Now, this deploy script is like a test script. So what it's doing is it's actually getting an account called deployer from the environment. And basically, if you have a .env file and you have this information in your .env file, it will pull that information. But if it doesn't, it will just automatically create one in localnet. All right, now let's take a look at this code here. We're using this Algorand client instance, doing .client, and we're calling this getTypedAppFactory method inside of this client property. And we're passing in the Hello World Factory class that we imported from the Hello World client file. And we are setting the default sender as the deployer account that we have got over here. And we're getting the factory instance. So this factory instance is then going to be used over here. And we're going to use the deploy method to actually deploy our smart contract. And when you are deploying your contract, you can think of it as instantiating a Python class. If a Python class is a blueprint, the contract that we write in Algorand Python is like a blueprint for your contract. But you need to deploy them to the blockchain to actually be able to interact with it. And you can think of that conceptually like instantiating a Python class. And that's what we're doing over here. Now we're saying on update, we're going to append app, and on schema break, we're going to append the app. This is like some configurations that defines what's going to happen when the contract errors or if the contract is updated. Now, when you call the deploy method, it's going to return two values: the typed application client instance that you will use to interact with your contract and the result of this transaction. Great. The next thing here, we're saying if the result of this deploy transaction was successful, then we are going to send a payment transaction using the Algorand client to the deployed smart contract's address, 1algo. So we're basically funding some minimum balance to the deployed contract. And then we have some code here where we're going to use the app client instance that we got by deploying the contract, send the transaction, and we're going to call the hello method that is defined inside of the smart contract. Now, what's nice about using the typed application client is that because this client contains all of the information of your contract, because it was created using the ABI spec, it knows what methods the contract has. That's why when we do .send and do dot, it knows that the available method inside of this contract is the hello method. So you don't have to manually go back and forth trying to figure out what method this contract provides. It's just the app client knows already, and it will help you by showing it on IntelliSense. It's really nice. So we're going to call the hello method, and you can see that it takes in a couple arguments here. And the first argument is called args. And this is where we pass in the argument for the hello method. So quickly going back to the contract here, you can see that the hello method takes in the name argument, which is a string type, right? So we're going to pass in the name argument here, and we're actually going to use the hello args class that we import from the hello world client file. And the reason why we do that is because if we do that, it knows the argument type that it takes in. So it just provides more IntelliSense around your code, making it easier for you to write your code. So we're actually just going to provide the name variable here, which is set to world. Let's spice it up a bit and just say, hello, devs, I don't know, learning Algorand. That's you guys. Okay, cool. So this one line of code here is going to send a transaction, an application call transaction that calls the hello method, and we get a response that says whether this transaction was executed or not. And we're gonna print out these results here. We're gonna say, hey, called hello method on this contract with this app ID, and we received the response over here. So response.abi return is going to give you the return value of calling the hello method. So that's the default deploy script here. Obviously, you can change this later on. If you have modified your contract and it's no longer the hello world contract, you would update this import line here. You would probably remove interacting with the contract, but the rest you can keep it as is because it's basically deploying just any contract that is imported from over here. Okay, so how do I run this file? You go to your terminal, open up your terminal, and you run Algokit project deploy, and then you define the network that you want to deploy in. And here we're going to do localnet. Now, if I do this, it will fail because right now I don't have localnet running in my background. So when you're developing on Algorand, and you're probably going to be starting off by interacting with the localnet, and you always want to have your localnet launched in the background so that you can interact with it. So to do that, the first thing you want to do is you want to open up Docker. After opening up Docker, you want to run Algokit localnet start. And that's going to spin up a Docker container that runs localnet on your computer. So if you go to your Docker desktop, you should see Algokit sandbox and have all of these containers running. Now, once you have confirmed that, you could do Algokit localnet status to see if there's anything wrong with your localnet. But basically, if you see running for everything, you're good to go. Okay, so localnet is running. Let's now deploy our contract. We do Algokit project deploy localnet. And when I run this command, what Algokit is doing is it's going to look inside of the smart contracts folder, find all of the smart contract folder. So we could have multiple smart contracts inside the smart contracts folder, and find all of the deploy config.py file and run all of the scripts. And since we only have one here, it only ran this file over here. And you can see that the printed values here, we're saying deploying app hello world, and we got received hello devs learning Algorand. So that right there has interacted with the deployed hello world smart contract on our localnet and called the hello method and received this value right here. So that's a demonstration of how you would be building and deploying your smart contract using the Algokit template, and kind of showing you the workflow that you'll be going through when you're building stuff on Algorand. Now, in another video, you will learn how to write tests for your smart contract. So we have this test folder here, and it gives you 2 default tests for the Hello World smart contract. And you will see how to write these tests, and how you can modify your test to test your own smart contract. And also in another video, we will show you how to deploy and interact with your smart contract using Lora, our visual blockchain explorer that also provides various dev tooling to quickly test your smart contract, or also just like interact with live smart contracts on the blockchain. So it's a nice visual way of debugging or interacting with your smart contract. So check out that video if you want to learn how you can test your application, deploy your contract visually on Lora. But that's it for this video. I hope you learned something here. And if you have any questions or if you ran into any issues, please come to our Discord channel. Our DevRel team and our community developers are very active there, and we will have your questions answered so that you can successfully go through this process, kind of get the sense of how to do this so that you can just go on and start building your own thing.